A man sat alone by the bridge, calmly waiting for the police to arrive because he had killed the market. He even hung Hongmin's severed head on the 100-meter-high bridge in front of the police and reporters, but under the guns of the police and reporters. Not only was he not afraid, he also calmly sat at the scene, appearing extremely calm. Suddenly, a car broke through the police barricade and rushed straight towards the murderer. This person was the veteran criminal police officer Ponho of the police team. As soon as he got out of the car, Ponho rushed towards the murderer, because the murderer was Sunman. As his teammate, Sunman was the police team's genius criminal psychologist and also an unprecedented detective in Korean history. Ponho opened his mouth to question Sunman why he was sitting at the scene, but Sunman's answer surprised him. Sunman admitted bluntly that he was the one who killed the person. Ponho naturally did not believe that his teammate would kill someone. Ponho grabbed Sunman by the collar and asked him what he was leaving for, but Sunman avoided answering, so Ponho had no choice but to hand Sunman over to his colleagues in the police team. After arriving at the police station, Sunman was still unusually calm, but Ponho couldn't figure out Sunman's real purpose, no matter how hard he thought. The police found many of Sunman's fingerprints on the car at the crime scene. The DNA found on the cable that hung Hongmin's head also matched Sunman's DNA. And now, judging from all the evidence at the scene, Sunman was the murderer. But Ponho knew that such obvious evidence must have been left by Sunman on purpose. If Sunman really wanted to kill someone, he wouldn't have left any evidence for the police. And when Ponho, who knew Sunman very well, saw Sunman doing this, he became even more certain of his thoughts. Because every time Sunman grasped the whole situation, he would unconsciously do this action. Suddenly, the interrogation room door was pushed open. A woman walked in. She was Yoo-hee, Sunman's girlfriend, also the daughter of the murdered Hongmin. Faced with her question, Sunman calmly replied that yes, he killed her father. Yoo-hee couldn't believe it when she heard it, but she also noticed Sunman's actions, so she suddenly had doubts in her heart. Ponho was angry and asked Sunman to confess the incident, but Sunman calmly admitted the crime he had committed. In order to investigate the truth of the incident, Ponho asked Yoo-hee about Sunman's recent unusual actions. Yoo-hee just remembered that Sunman had really changed recently. She discovered that Sunman had a phone that she had never seen before, but that night she suddenly felt darkness before her eyes and fainted. When she woke up, it was already the next morning. She had no idea what had happened during that time, but they were sure that Sunman had his own purpose in doing so. But right at her father's funeral, when Yoo-hee accidentally saw the time on the wall clock, she suddenly remembered something. So she called the forensic doctor and rushed to see Sunman. She firmly assured Sunman that he did not kill anyone, because Yoo-hee had confirmed with the forensic doctor that her father's time of death was between 9 and 10 p.m. on the day of the incident. Yoo-hee clearly remembered that during this time, Sunman was still at home, but no matter what Yoo-hee said, Sunman still insisted that he was the murderer, and in court, he took the initiative to admit his guilt of murder. Because the evidence at the scene was so clear, the judge sentenced Sunman to 15 years in prison, but when he walked out of the court, Sunman unconsciously carried out an action that he would only do when calculating everything. As a criminal psychology analyst, Yoo-hee had already realized that Sunman's true purpose was to find a way to put her in prison. Now that Sunman had achieved his goal of putting her in prison, he would definitely take further action. Therefore, she decided to start investigating from the list of prisoners currently serving sentences at Anlam prison to find out Sunman's true purpose. But on the very first day Sunman arrived at the prison, terrible plot that he did not expect began. Very quickly, Sunman entered the prison smoothly and coincidentally was assigned to the same cell as the prison. What no one knew was that it was all carefully planned by Sunman before entering the prison. He had discussed and reached an agreement with Sung-soo. Sunman finished packing his things, and the two looked at each other in agreement. As long as Sung-soo cooperated well with Sungmin's plan in prison, Sunman promised that after everything was over, he would deposit 500 billion into Sung-soo's mother's account, and Sung-soo's life would be more comfortable in the future. Less than 2 hours after Sunman entered prison, the prison began to have underground movements. The police opened the door and called everyone in the cell to the rooftop. Sung-soo clearly saw that something was wrong. Because the rooftop had just been repaired and was empty yesterday, Sunman also realized that something was fishy. Sure enough, a large group of people had gathered on the rooftop, and as soon as their group reached the rooftop, the police signaled them and quickly turned around and locked the iron door. The other party's goal was very clear. They opened their mouths to ask them to hand over Sunman, but at this time, Sung-soo spoke up to stop them. Unexpectedly, the other side pulled out all the prepared weapons at the same time. It turned out that right after Sunman entered the prison, someone outside had put pressure on the prison, demanding that Sunman disappear forever in prison. A pre-planned murder took place on the rooftop. Sung-soo and Sunman were already outnumbered by the other side. In addition, the other side had prepared weapons, so Sungmin's group was quickly beaten back. Sunman was quickly injured. Sung-soo had no choice but to order a stop, first to have his subordinates retreat, but the iron door was locked from the inside by the police. But the leader of the other side, Chun-hee, took out a prepared can of gasoline and poured it onto the rooftop, then used an iron bar to slide out the fire. The rooftop immediately turned into a sea of fire. Sungmin's group was trapped in the corner. Just as the leader of the other side threw the can of gasoline at them, Sungmin led everyone to jump to the opposite rooftop, almost losing his life in prison on the first day. Sungmin knew that his time was running out. He asked Sung-soo about the structure of the D4 area in the prison. That building had been closed for more than 10 years, but strangely 2 years ago, they suddenly renovated the building. Even stranger was that they assigned some special prisoners there, and they forgot to know each other. Sung-soo said that place didn't look like a place to hold prisoners, but more like it was protecting a very important person. No one had ever seen that person's face. They only knew that person's prison number was 1669. Sung-soo also said that the leader on the rooftop today, Chun-hee, also came from that building after dominating the prison for a while. He and his gang had been transferred to D4 area. Sungmin could basically confirm that the hidden prisoner number 1669 was the British person they were looking for. After Chun-hee failed to assassinate Sungmin, that night police went to Daehun to plan another assassination. Daehun had already assassinated Sungmin before going to prison, but after failing, he was left with a scar on his face. The next day, a Bible was sent to the prison. The police checked it and found nothing unusual. Only a few pages looked like they had been soaked in water. Then a prisoner tore some pieces from the Bible, soaked them in water, and stirred them continuously, then threw the rest of the Bible into the fire. That night, Chun-hee suddenly went to Daehun, laughing and telling him to enjoy the cup of coffee in his hand. As a result, in the middle of the night, Daehun was poisoned and foaming at the mouth. Even though Min-chae had just arrived at the scene, he immediately concluded that it was prisoners' own doing. In prison, it was common for prisoners to seek out substances. Do-hee and Pan-ho did not believe Min-chae's lies at all. The two went directly to Gwan-ho, but Gwan-ho concluded that he was self-censoring without any incident. Just a few hours after the prisoner's death, the prison police and the hospital had the same testimony. It was obvious that they had colluded, while the records showed that the prisoner had more than a month left to serve his sentence. But committing a suicide at this time was clearly unreasonable. It was definitely a premeditated murder. But Gwan-ho explains that some prisoners are afraid of having to readjust to normal life, so they will also choose to self-censor. At this time, Do-hee makes a strange request to Pan-ho. She wants to search Sungmin's cell. After not finding any valuable clues, she goes with Pan-ho to search the crematorium. When she finds the Bible that has not been burned, Do-hee was even more certain that the prisoner did not commit suicide but was murdered, and there was only one person who could have done this. Ken-ho asked her if it wasn't Sungmin. Do-hee answered that it was definitely true. Ken-ho completely didn't believe Do-hee's guess. After all, Sungmin had only been in prison for the second day. There was no way he could have planned so carefully. But Do-hee explained eloquently that the Bible was their clue. The prisoner poisoning case and the previous poisoning case at the fishing ground were exactly the same. Could it be that the first thing Sungmin did when he entered prison was to kill the groom? Do-hee directly interrogated Sungmin as a criminal forensic expert. As soon as she sat down, she took out the unburned Bible and asked Sungmin why he killed the groom. Do-hee was able to think so clearly because in a previous case, the suspect had dissolved Maithui into the pages of a book to transport Maithui in this way, and the person who taught Do-hee how to solve the case using this method was Sungmin. But this time, Sungmin firmly denied the murder. Do-hee also changed her previous attitude, saying that she would investigate to the end. When the news of the poisoned marriage proposal spread, another woman named Trung-ha also thought that this was definitely Sungmin's work. She went to D4 and was furious with the room. They were worried that if someone poisoned the prison and they couldn't find the culprit, then leader No. 1669, whom they were protecting in prison, would also be in danger of death at any time. Do-hee followed the entire forensic examination of the body and immediately knew that the poisoned marriage proposal was poisoned, but the forensics could not clarify the source of the poison in a short time. At this time, a tattoo on the suitor's body caught Do-hee's attention because she had seen an identical tattoo in a fight with a criminal. At this time in prison, Sung-soo was also questioning Sungmin about whether he had killed the suitor or not. But Sungmin did not answer directly, only gently telling Sung-soo to comply with their deal. But at this time, Do-hee made an important discovery. The Bible on Sungmin's bookshelf had disappeared. At this time, she suddenly received a phone call and told her to turn on the TV to watch the news. news. Doo-hee was extremely surprised when the news reported that someone anonymously accused the imprisoned Sunman of committing another murder in his cell. Murders were constantly occurring in prison, and all the clues left behind after a series of murders pointed to the genius criminal psychologist Sunman. Very soon, the report on the poison of the poisoned prisoner had results. The poison used by the murderer came from Russia and was exactly the same as poison found on the Bible, and Doo-hee accidentally discovered that the Bible in Sunman's house had disappeared. From what she saw, it was very clear who the murderer was. As for Ban-ho, who always knew Sunman well, he said the words that made everyone use him. Ban-ho also said that if Sunman really planned to kill the marriage proposal, then spread the news that the Bible really came from Sunman's house, then they were now completely acting according to his will, because this could be a plan that Sunman had arranged in advance. Doo-hee also realized that all of this was Sunman's plan, and no one else could have done it so perfectly. Sunman finally confessed to Sung-soo that all his plans were outside the prison. All they needed to do now was to calmly wait for these days to pass. Sure enough, Sunman had arranged everything outside beforehand. Sunman guessed that in order to protect the criminal number 1669, the opposing force would most likely find a replacement to propose marriage. As he had predicted, Trung-ha was gathering people to start rearranging and playing another card, because eliminating Sunman to eliminate the concern had become urgent. But they did not know that Sunman's next plan was to kill the criminal number 1669. That is, the leader of the entire Trung-ha force. The junior suspected Sunman and thought that he could not do it, but Sung-soo thought that on the first day in prison he had planned to kill the proposal perfectly. Sunman's terrifying abilities were beyond his imagination, but this Sung-soo declared that he only agreed to protect Sunman's safety, absolutely not letting his hands get tangled again, to clarify the purpose of Sunman's plan, even though he once again sought out Sunman. But this time, Sunman reminded her that he did not want Yoo-hee to continue to participate in the following matters, and shouted that what was about to happen was something she could not handle, asking her to stop all further investigations. At this time, Yoo-hee asked Sunman a question again. Was his date with her also part of his plan? Sunman did not answer. 17 months ago, at Yoo-hee's grandfather's birthday party, Yoo-hee was attending the party when she suddenly received a text message saying that her grandfather was looking for her. But when she and the secretary went upstairs, they found that no matter how hard they knocked on the door, no one answered. She pushed the door open and saw her grandfather lying unconscious in a puddle of mud. At that time, Sunman arrived at the scene and observed for a while. Then he immediately said that this was definitely an acquaintance who committed the crime. It was obvious that the bullet came from the door. The killer started poking the victim from the door, which is usually when a person decides to kill an acquaintance. The crime will happen before talking. This is definitely not from conscience, but instinct. Sunman also specifically told Hongmin to keep Hongmin. During the interrogation, Sunman learned that the victim was Yoo-hee's grandfather. Yoo-hee revealed her identity to Sunman at that time, and the two started a relationship from there. But right while Sunman was interrogating, person with a bullet took advantage of the chaos to run away from the crowd that was watching. After examining the scene, Sunman reconstructed the entire process of the murderer's crime. The entire time of the crime only took 1 minute and 30 seconds. Meanwhile, the time the secretary went downstairs was 6:40. Yoo-hee discovered her grandfather at 6:52, meaning the total time of the crime was only 1 minute and 30 seconds. Adding the travel time, the murderer must have committed the crime at the fastest speed and then left. The entire surveillance system of the building was cut off at 6:30. So it is very possible that the camera recorded the murderer cutting off the surveillance system. But when Sunman went to the security room to check, he discovered that the person coming out of the camera control room was Hongmin. Sunman guessed that Hongmin took advantage of the front angle of the camera to cut off the surveillance system. Then, he used the murderer to kill his father. Hearing Sunman's speculation, Ban-ho was very scared. Because he knew Sunman was not joking, Sunman noticed that Hongmin expressed his desire for revenge. Before the reporters asked questions at press conference, as a politician, he must have been trained in how to express his emotions. But in the process, he made a mistake. He said what he wanted to say before the reporters asked questions. This was not a politician's statement, but an instinctive reaction. It was very possible that the president's huge assets were his biggest motive for murder. But no matter how rigorous the deduction was, it was just a deduction. Without solid evidence, Ban-ho could not begin the investigation. Moreover, investigating Hongmin would be very difficult. Not long after, Sunman happened to see Hongmin's daughter, Yoo-hee, who was about to start working as a criminal analyst. It was at this time that Sunman began to put his plan into action, because he was sure that Yoo-hee was the one who knew his family best. So Sunman started to invite Yoo-hee Hee to join the investigation of the case. They collected all the surveillance footage within 2 hours before the incident. Staying at the only exit of the hotel and starting to filter, Sunman also took the opportunity to take Yoo Hee home from work to learn more about her. He was surprised to see Yoo Hee's residence. It was completely inconsistent with her personality because Sunman did not know that when she was young, Yoo Hee had witnessed her mother making her commit suicide at home. Meanwhile, her market father not only stood there coldly watching, but also pushed the suffering Yoo Hee away. At the scene of her grandfather's murder, Yoo Hee was also shocked to discover her father's extremely calm expression. It was exactly the same expression he had on her mother's face. Crime scene. Even more terrifying was next to her grandfather's hat. Yoo Hee also saw her father smile strangely, but Sunman had guessed correctly that Yoo Hee really knew a lot of things. Very quickly afterwards, through comparing and screening the surveillance footage, they identified a suspect. At 7:02, the suspect entered the hotel, and 16 minutes later, the suspect was recorded by the surveillance camera on the other side. But during this time, it was impossible to go up to the 21st floor to kill someone and then go back down. But both of them knew that this person was not the culprit. He was just a scapegoat covering for the real culprit. Very quickly afterwards, a witness provided clues to the police. On the day of the crime, people saw Hongmin's younger brother Hongsu's car parked near the hotel. Sunmin and Banho immediately went to find Hongsu. Banho asked Hongsu frankly if he had been to the hotel. Hongsu did not hide it and said that he had been to the hotel, but he only stayed there for a while and then returned. But his next words revealed a loophole. Hongsu asked police if they were suspecting him now. How could he have used a knife to stab his father's neck? But from the beginning to the end, the police did not say how the president died. It was clear that Hongsu knew the inside story. He also became the biggest suspect at the moment. When Sunmin reviewed the surveillance camera at the scene again, he discovered a staff member working at the hotel. It's very possible that he witnessed the real face of the murderer with his own eyes. But on the way to confirm the witness, Sunmin told Yoo Hee that Hongmin's younger brother, Hongsu, was just a liar. The real culprit was someone else, because it was the president's birthday. Only Hongmin knew which room the president was in the hotel, and only he could stop the president from donating all of his huge assets to society. Obviously, Yoo Hee had also confirmed the answer in her heart. Now all the truth would be revealed when she met the witness. But unexpectedly, before they arrived, a group of people had already arrived at the witness's house. When Sunman arrived at the witness's house, the house was empty. Fortunately, when they were about to attack the witness, Yoo Hee and Sunman arrived in time, and it was at this time that Yoo Hee first saw the strange tattoo on the man. Thanks to Sunman's quick movements, both of them escaped, and the witness was also brought safely to the police station. Sunman only said a few words to make him reveal the truth. The president had once cared a lot about this witness. On his birthday, he planned to go congratulate the president, but unexpectedly met him. Hongsu was in a bad mood in the hallway. Hongsu threatened him to keep his mouth shut and told him to prepare to go abroad. With the witness's testimony, Banho immediately applied for an arrest warrant for Hongsu. But what they didn't expect was that Hongsu already knew everything. He was still sitting in the office waiting for them to arrive. But what made them feel strange was that everything in his office had been cleaned out. Sunmin realized that Hongsu must have received the news, and in such a short time, they were able to receive the news, meaning that a spy had appeared in their team. Banho and Sunmin had a big fight over this. Because Banho believed that his teammates would absolutely not do such a thing, the two of them were not happy about it. After Hongsu was arrested, Hongmin, the market leader, expressed his stance through the media that he would demand the prosecutor and the police to punish him as if he were his own brother. But then he personally went to the police station and secretly asked to meet Hongsu. It was too late when Sunmin came to stop him. Hongmin met Hongsu and personally promised him that he would release Hongsu soon. Then, he turned around and walked out of the police station. He then told reporters that he thought police had over-investigated him. Sunmin did not expect that Hongmin and Hongsu would use a delaying tactic. First, letting Hongsu take all the blame. Then, he deliberately leaked the news to the media. But after the meeting, he blamed the police for over-investigating him and acted out a scene of saving Hongsu. In front of the media, he announced that he would return all the inheritance to society and clear all suspicions. As for building Hongmin's good image in the eyes of the people, it must be said that this is really a two-pronged attack. At present, they can only protect the witness well first. Although Sunmin already knew their plan from Minjae's story, it was still difficult for him to escape from danger after taking the others out. The prison police locked all the doors. Then they handed the only key card to Nagul. Nagul led people to open Sunmin's cell door. But unexpectedly, Sunmin was already prepared. But two hands are no match for a large crowd. Sunman was quickly chased and attacked by them. He could only keep running away. He knew that only by finding a way to get keycard from Nagul's hand would he have a chance to escape. Sunman found the right moment and grabbed Nagul's neck. But in the end, he was still surrounded and beaten by a group of people. Sungsu was locked outside and could only watch anxiously. Just as Nagul was about to kill him with a knife, Sunman laughed, because when he was holding Nagul's neck, he had gotten the key card to open the door. Sunman threw the card towards the door, and his teammate Moonho got the key card to open the door. Sungsu led his juniors to open the door and rushed in time to stop Nagul. The police who were running the prison also rushed in to prevent the riot. Meanwhile, through investigating the list of the prison escapees, Yu-hee discovered that Min-jae had actually inherited all of Sungmin's assets. She finally learned that Min-jae was actually Sungmin's spy in the prison escape, and the secretary told Yu-hee that before his grandfather was killed, he had been kidnapped once. But the strange thing was, the two men and a woman who kidnapped him later felt strangely sorry for themselves because their plan to kill Sungmin had failed again. Trung-ha was furious again because the trial result of their leader Na 1669 was out. He could be released from prison in a month, but this also showed that within a month, as long as Sungmin was still alive, 1669 would always be in danger. Sungmin had already predicted the result of 1669's verdict, so he had already started his plan. Sungmin asked Sungsu to think of a way to deal with the surveillance camera in the office and get the documents in the cabinet. Moonho followed his old job, found an opportunity to mix up the keys of the prison police, then copied the key mark and returned it. Moonho successfully made the cabinet key, taking advantage of the time when the prison police were cleaning the trash can and going to the bathroom. Sungsu had 2 minutes to open the cabinet to find the documents. Not too much time, but not too little, just in time for the prison police to return from the bathroom. Sungsu successfully got the documents and hid them in the garbage truck. On this side, Min-jae went to Nagul, hoping to use 20 billion to buy information from him. Unexpectedly, Nagul agreed. The substance that Daobi had previously had was actually because Nagul had received money from Min-jae. Nagul had burned the poisonous Bible paper into water, causing Daobi to accidentally drink the substance due to poisoning. Sungmin's plan was about to begin. Nagul gave the information to Sungsu, who was preparing to destroy the documents. Because he couldn't kill Sungmin, Kangho decided to transfer Sungmin to another prison, but in fact, all of this was within Sungmin's expectations. But he didn't expect Kangho to suddenly come to Sungsu, using the price of amnesty in exchange for killing Sungmin. Sungmin was afraid that if Yu-hee got close to the truth, she would meet the god of death. So, he asked Min-jae to stop Yu-hee from investigating. Min-jae asked someone to drug Yu-hee from behind. When she woke up, she was lying in the hospital, and she had no memory of anything that had happened. Sungmin also knew that if he was careless now, he would lose his mother immediately. Before being transferred to another cell, he asked Sungsu to prepare a phone in someone else's name. Sungsu quickly took advantage of the opportunity to distribute food to put the phone in someone else's name in a milk carton and gave it to Sungmin, asking him what his next plan was. But at this moment, the apartment came, hinting that Sungsu could not be given too much time. Telling him to quickly kill Sungmin, Sungsu was momentarily in a dilemma. At this time, Yu-hee, through investigating the clues of the kidnapping of his grandfather, found the apartment where Sechin, who was involved in the case, was staying, and contacted the building manager of the apartment to find out about Sechin's situation. But when it came to Sechin, Hegum said that she didn't know anything. Suddenly, Hegum received a phone call. Yu-hee took the opportunity while she was out to answer the phone. Having discovered a book with a camel on its cover under the cabinet, Yu-hee knew that Hegum definitely knew something. She hid the book and hurriedly said goodbye. But as soon as she left the door, Yu-hee saw a group of women walking towards her from the opposite side of the stairs, and Hegum, realizing that something was wrong, also chased after them. Yu-hee panicked and the book accidentally fell to the ground. The woman in charge saw it and yelled at Yu-hee to leave quickly. Yu-hee immediately realized that this apartment must be hiding some terrible secret. Sungbin used the blanket as a cover and took out someone else's phone from the milk carton. Sungbin called the prosecutor Sung-jae in charge of his case, asked him to come to the detention center, and said that he had important information. Sungbin then told Sung-jae about true identity of prisoner number 1669. It turned out that Professor Park-hoon of the guild was prisoner number 1669. Meanwhile, Sung-jae had been in charge of many cases. The mastermind behind Mu was the guild. They would eliminate anyone who was disadvantageous to them, covering everything with fake faith. Called the guidance of God, the victims included the wealthy class and those in power in Anlam. They took advantage of their weaknesses and organized to hide their crimes. Sungbin's sister was also a victim because she was chasing them. While the two were talking, Sungsu quietly came to the front door of the apartment. After a mental struggle, struggle, he still knocked on the door. In order to be released on bail, he decided to help the apartment eliminate Sunman the next day while walking around. Yoo-hee, through Songa in the apartment, wanted to find out the situation of the strange group of women in the apartment. But unexpectedly, a woman suddenly stabbed the Songa with a knife and ran away. Yoo-hee immediately chased after her, and at a crossroads she found the woman. Suddenly, a car rushed over, and the person who got out of the car was Sunjae. It turned out that Sunmin knew that Yoo-hee might be in danger, so he asked Sunjae for help. Unexpectedly, at this time the woman suddenly used the piece of cloth in her hand to cut herself. Fortunately, she was rescued in time and saved her life. Yoo-hee also learned from this woman that her father's nature was related to religion. The secret must lie in the strange group of women in the apartment. But when Yoo-hee was about to investigate, she discovered that the group of women had moved away during the night and suddenly disappeared completely. The woman who had failed to cut herself in the hospital had also disappeared. Yoo-hee knew that what she was investigating would give Sunmin more answers that she wanted to know, so she went to run away from prison, but unexpectedly Sunmin could not escape today. While walking, the prison suddenly broke out in a riot. The prisoners and the police ran away from prison, and there was a conflict. And this was also Sunmin's music once again in the apartment. Nuggle realized something was wrong. Nuggle saw Sung-soo holding a knife and walking towards Sunmin, so he called his juniors to protect Sunmin, but it seemed too late. Yoo-hee also happened to see Sunmin lying in the puddle, but in fact this was a plan set up by Sunmin. Min-jae hurriedly ran into the crowd and called an ambulance. Because he was rescued in time, he only lost a lot of his puddles and went into shock. At this time, Yoo-hee finally understood why Sunmin strongly opposed her continuing the investigation. Sunmin just woke up and asked how much time they had left. This was part of Sunmin's plan. He knew that the apartment would ask Sung-soo to kill him. Sunmin told Sung-soo to promise the apartment and kill him during the next day's walk, because only then would Sunmin not be transferred. He would have enough time to eliminate prisoner 1669, but the risk of this plan was very high. If he pushed a little harder, Sunmin would actually be physically hurt by it. Fortunately, everything was under Sunmin's control. The next day, he returned to his cell and told Sung-soo that he wanted to go to D4 prison. Because Sunmin had memorized the original structure of D4 prison, he only needed Sung-soo, who had participated in the reform, to tell him about the reform. But at this time, after many times of pressuring the apartment to kill Sunmin without success, Trung-ha had just instructed the apartment to increase security for D4 prison. He also instructed that if necessary, they would attack Yoo-hee. Although she is Hongmin's daughter, she is also Sungmin's only weakness. At the same time, prisoner number 1669 personally met Nagul and exposed that Nagul had accepted Sungmin's affection and had secretly helped Sungmin many times. Uncle Hun smiled, but his words contained a threat, meaning that if Nagul wanted to live, he could only help him get rid of the thorn in his side, Sungmin. Because the security of D4 prison was increased, Sungmin could only enter D4 prison from behind, and that would require Moonho's help. Sungmin began to carry out his plan with difficulty. A battle of wits was secretly taking place in the prison. But at this crucial moment, Min-jae went to Yoo-hee in the hope that she could stop Sungmin, because Yoo-hee was currently the only one who could stop him. But Yoo-hee took this opportunity to ask him back. When did Sungmin's plan start? 2 years ago, a man who was driven to the brink of death by the cult came to Sungmin's younger sister Jeonju and gave her some documents. Jeonju saw a video recording the murder of cult followers just because they left the cult, but because the image was too dark, there was not enough evidence, and no further investigation was possible. The whistleblower, as the manager of the Yikshin Foundation, was also murdered after killing the whistleblower. They used the whistleblower's phone to text Jeonju, luring Jeonju to the place where they killed and dumped the body. Just as Jeonju realized something was wrong and called for help, a car hit her before she died. She told Sungmin that she had hidden something important under her work chair when Jeonju died. She was carrying Min-jae's child. Sungmin found a USB drive under Jeonju's chair, and from there, he began to investigate the human society. And from that moment on, Sungmin began to collect evidence of the human society's crimes and began to make a big move. At the same time, he also learned from Min-jae that her father, Hongmin, was the human society's right-hand man, and he also asked the question in his heart. The person who killed her father was not Sungmin at all, so who was the real culprit? At this moment, Min-jae said that he had evidence of Hongmin's murder, but he could only say this much, and after he finished speaking, he turned around and left, while Sungmin was preparing to start his plan. But Sung-soo realized a very serious problem when Sungmin started his plan. He had never planned on how to return. Sungmin had made up his mind to die with prisoner number 1669. On this side, the woman brought 2 boyfriends, sneaked into a woman's house, and killed the man. Hong-soo, who was waiting outside, immediately called the police to blame Do-hee for murder. murder. Do-hee immediately became the murderer in an emergency. She had no choice but to call Sung-jae, the only person she could trust for help. But now all the evidence at the scene pointed to Do-hee as the murderer. It was only a matter of time before she was wanted. Sunman learned from the apartment that Do-hee had fallen into the trap of the human society. He realized that he could no longer delay his plan. Sunman had to act as soon as possible. Sunman went to Sunman to find out the whole story, trying to find a loophole to help Do-hee escape danger. Sure enough, Sunman was inspired by Sunman's analysis, and through the secret investigation, Sunman discovered that Panho was actually also a member of the human society. Panho felt that he had been a police officer all his life, but he had failed to protect the people closest to him. When Panho's wife was home alone, she was retaliated against by Panho's enemies. The enemies not only severely injured Panho's wife, but also raped her. Panho's wife had to endure such an inhumane incident. Afterwards, the faith of the humanist society gave Panho's wife the courage to continue living. From then on, Panho began walking on a path of no return, and Panho's meeting with Sunman at this time was also a final warning to Sunman and Yoo-hee. But Sunman knew that if he did not eliminate the power of the humanist society, many more innocent victims would suffer. Sunman knew that he had to act sooner, but at this time, Sunbi, who was still secretly investigating outside, was brutally killed and hung with a rope next to the car. Seeing his close comrades brutally murdered, Panho was extremely pained, but the expression of police officer Sunman beside him gradually became strange. It turned out that Sunman discovered that Sunbi was investigating the human society, so he took advantage of Sunbi's feelings for her to lure Sunbi home. When Sunbi discovered that Sunman might be related to the human society, it was too late, and Sunman was not only an undercover agent in the police station, but also the daughter of the human society's leader. Meanwhile, Panho had also guessed that Sunbi's nature was caused by the human society. Panho just didn't expect that it was the leader's daughter who did it. Sunman kept recalling the words that Min-chae said in their last phone call. He finally understood Min-chae's intention in that last sentence. Like a crispy knife, Min-chae had left something for Sunman on the chair, and Panho suddenly called Sunman and told him that Sunbi had been killed. This made Sunman feel even more compelled to act sooner. Sunman went to Sung-soo for help, and Sunman told Sung-soo and Moonho to set a trap. He seriously injured the night guard, forcing them to change the night guard. Sunman began to act at night. Sunman calculated the search time of the headlights and went to the iron door of building D4, but he didn't expect to be seen by the guards when they opened the door. Just as Sunman was about to smash the wall with a hammer, he suddenly heard the guards scream. Sunman could only attack the guards and quickly escape. Sunman's assassination plan was also discovered by the spy. The spy ordered the entire prison to dig 3 meters of soil to find Sunman. 10 hours ago, Yoo-hee came to see Sunman. She didn't want Sunman to become a murderer for wanting to overthrow the human society, so she told him her plan. She would pretend to agree with the leader, consider herself the leader's saintess, and draw all the attention of the sect to herself. Then, Sunman would take this opportunity to seal the human society's winery and one-hearted fund. But Sunman knew that doing so would put Yoo-hee in greater danger. Moreover, using legal measures was very likely not able to shake the foundation of the human society. After the operation failed, Sunman called Sung-jae and asked him to ensure Yoo-hee's safety. Now Sunman could only bet on one move. Sunman told Sung-soo to bring Kanho's wife home safely, and this gamble of Sunman was correct. Being held by the human society for a long time, Kanho still has a conscience. He doesn't want to be held back by the human society forever, so Kanho decides to secretly help Sunman. Kanho gives Sung-soo a cell phone and an access card to the D4 building, but Kanho can only help them by 10 minutes when they act. Sung-soo uses his cell phone to contact Sunman, giving him the access card at the beach at night. Sung-soo also tells Sunman that he will definitely do his best to help him. At the same time, Yoo-hee has already carried out her plan. She followed Jung-ha to see the bishop of the sect. Yoo-hee saw this evil Park Hun and immediately understood everything. Facts have proved that from a very young age, Hong-min dedicated her to Park Jun-hai as a saint. Her mother did a stupid thing to protect Yoo-hee under the pressure of humanism. With this in mind, you exposed Park Hun's plot. The so-called saint is just an excuse for Park Jun-hae to satisfy his desire. In order to satisfy his desire, he killed many innocent people. At this time, Song-min in prison has begun to take action to protect Song-min. Moonho began to create riots in the prison. He opened the cell door and released prisoner. Song-min goes to D4 building. At the same time, Sun-jae took this opportunity to take people to inspect the funds and wineries of the People's Church. In the courtyard of the brewery, they found the bodies of many victims. The scene at the scene is shocking and shocking. Finally, Song-min came to the last door of D4. The moment of revenge he was looking forward to finally arrived. But I didn't expect Chun-hee to stop it. Jung-ha also threatened Sung-min with Yoo-hee as a hostage. Chen-hee has a chance to attack Sung-min, but at the critical moment, Sung-min pulled out the gun that Min-jae left him. Then he pointed directly at the bishop's forehead. But at critical moment, Yoo-hee ordered Sung-min to stop. Yoo-hee said that since she came in, she has directly transmitted all the recorded evidence to the outside. Human society is out of date. Jung-ha called to confirm and was very angry. Seeing this, Chun-hee went with the wind and led them away. Seeing this, the bishop suddenly dumped all his sins on Rong-ha's head. He said that everything he did was directed by Jang-hai. Then, he began to kneel down and ask Song-min for forgiveness. But Song-min knew that if he didn't kill Park Gun-hai himself, they would probably come back to get back at him. While Song-min was still hesitating, the gun rang. Subsequently, Park Gun-hai died on the spot. It turned out that Pan-hao's vest was up. Feeling guilty about the police, he ran to the prison to shoot instead of Sung-min. Pan-hao knew he was guilty, so he did something stupid. 3 months later, the backbone members of the Christian church were all tried by law. Unfortunately, Jung-ha, a serial killer, was not sentenced to death. She was only imprisoned indefinitely. At first, Pan-hao should have shot her all, but when Ju-yi returned to the office, she found Su-bin packing. Su-bin said she wanted to resign. When Ju-yi asked why, Su-bin only said that she had to go back to her hometown to inherit her father's career. But Ju-yi didn't know Su-bin's identity, so she didn't know Su-bin-yu had other plans. Su-bin is quietly leading the remaining humanities community to prepare for revenge. Soon after, the fact that Song-min didn't kill anyone was revealed. You're finally released. After bidding farewell to Sung-soo, Sung-min regained her freedom. In the end, people who are in love will definitely become a couple. However, what awaits them is the crime that has not been eradicated in this city. The film is over here. Thank you for your attention and concern. Bye-bye.